The night on planet Virex 9 was deadly cold. Even machines froze if left outside for too long. Winds howled across the silent ground, lifting dust and sharp ice crystals into the air. No one should have been out there. Not at that hour. Not. Without heat gear, inside a small metal shelter, one human sat alone. His name was Ethan, a mechanic left behind when the last shuttle flew off. He had chosen to stay, fixing broken systems in return for supplies, now with nothing but a heater, a blanket, and a half-cup of warm broth. He waited for the next day. The silence outside was thick, broken only by the whir of the heater. Then, a sound, a knock, soft, almost not there, like a weak breath tapping on metal. Ethan sat up fast. No one should be out there. He grabbed his torch, walked slowly to the door. Another knock, this time slower, more desperate. He opened the door, just a crack, his other hand holding a small tool for protection. There, half buried in snow and shivering like a leaf, was an alien woman. She was tall but bent down like her legs were giving up. Her skin was a soft, bluish purple, glowing faintly, but the light was dim like a dying flame. Snow had covered. Her silver hair and her eyes looked empty. She tried to speak but only coughed, then in a whisper broken and low she said, "Please. Just one warm drink." Ethan stared at her, heart racing. This planet was full of danger, slavers, bounty drones, and wild creatures. But this woman looked like none of them. She looked like someone who had been running for days, with nothing left. He opened the door, wider. "Come in before you freeze," he said. She fell forward, but he caught her just in time. Her body was ice cold, her clothes torn, and her hands bruised. He carried her to the corner near the heater and wrapped her in his blanket. Then, with his last cup of heated berry broth, he kneeled beside her. She looked at him with wide eyes full of pain, fear, and surprise. You're not afraid of me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan shook his head. "You're freezing. I'm not leaving anyone out there." She sipped the broth slowly, and as the warmth filled her chest, tears slid down her cheeks. No one had ever helped her like this, not without asking for something in return. She looked at the human, unsure how to speak what was building inside her. "I was trained to serve," she said softly, "but never have I been shown kindness." Ethan blinked, not knowing what to say. He had seen aliens before, but this one felt different, not just because she was beautiful, but because she looked broken. "What's your name?" he asked. She looked down. I don't have one anymore. They took it from me." Ethan frowned. "Then I'll give you one, until you remember." He looked at her glowing skin and quiet voice. "How about Vexa?" Her eyes blinked slowly. "Vexa." "Yes," she whispered. "That was once my name." The warmth from the drink brought life back to her face. She sat up a little straighter, her hands still shaking. Then she did something that made Ethan's heart stop. She placed both hands on her knees, bowed her head deeply, and said, "I will serve you until my last breath, human." Ethan stood frozen. No, he said, waving his hands. "I didn't help you for that. I'm not your master." But she shook her head slowly. "One warm drink," she said. "That's all it took to break the chains inside me." Outside, the wind howled, louder. But inside the small shelter, two beings from different worlds stared at each other. A human who had nothing but kindness, and an alien who had nothing left but a promise. The night was far from over, and Ethan didn't know that by offering one drink he had changed both their fates forever. The shelter was quiet. The heater hummed softly while Vexa slept in a corner. Wrapped in Ethan's old blanket, her chest rose and fell slowly. The glow in her skin had returned, but only a little. Her breathing was steady, but her dreams were not. She twitched in her sleep, small whimpers escaping her lips. Ethan sat nearby, watching her with tired eyes. He had given her the only warm drink he had left. He hadn't planned to take anyone in. But now, she was here. An alien woman with no name, no family, No home. He didn't even know where she came from, yet when she drank that broth and whispered she would serve him forever, something in Ethan shifted. The next morning she woke up slowly, her voice hoarse. "Where am I?" she asked, sitting up, confused. Ethan handed her a small bottle of water. "My shelter," he said. "You knocked on the door last night." She drank, blinking at the soft light coming through the cracks in the walls. "I thought I was going to die," she whispered. "I wanted to die." Ethan frowned. "Then why knock?" She looked at him, her eyes clear now. "Because I smelled something warm, something safe." She touched the spot where the blanket covered her chest. "And I hoped that someone inside wasn't cruel." Ethan crouched beside her. "You said you were trained to serve. What did you mean?" Her face darkened. She pulled back her sleeves, revealing faint burn marks around her wrists. "They called us bondservants," she said. "Taken young, trained hard, sold often. We are taught that our purpose is to please, to follow, to never speak back." "But I ran," she whispered. "I ran the moment the chain broke." Ethan stared at the marks in silence. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I don't want anyone to serve me. I just wanted to help." Vexa shook her head. "Kindness is more dangerous than cruelty where I come from." She looked down. "It makes us hope. And hope is punished." Ethan reached into his coat and pulled out a small survival biscuit. He offered it to her. "Then let's feed your hope." "You're free here, Vexa." She took the food slowly, hands trembling. After a long silence, she asked, "Why? Why would a human like you help a being like me?" Ethan chuckled softly. "I guess I'm just built wrong. Or maybe I've seen too much pain to ignore it anymore." Later that afternoon, while Ethan checked the perimeter sensors outside, Vexa explored the inside of the shelter. She found a drawer full of tools, wires, half-broken gadgets on a small table. There was a holographic photo of Ethan standing with a group of other humans. One of them, a young girl with dark hair, was circled in red. When Ethan returned, he saw Vexa holding the photo. "That's my sister," he said quietly. "She disappeared during a trade mission, years ago." "No one ever found her ship," Vexa looked up. "I saw women like her in the slave pits." Ethan's hands tightened around the doorframe. "But I didn't see her," Vexa said quickly. "I'm sorry." Ethan nodded, trying to hold in the anger. "I came here to look for trade records, anything to track her route. Instead, I found you." Vexa stood up, her voice calm but firm. "Then let me help you now. I know how the systems work, how the slavers hide ships and people. I can guide you, if you'll let me stay." Ethan stared at her, surprised. "Why would you want to stay?" She stepped closer, eyes glowing softly now. "Because you treated me like a person, not a thing. You didn't laugh when I cried, you didn't touch when I was weak. You gave me warmth, and you gave me a name." She kneeled, not in slavery but in choice. "This is not a command, it's a contract of shadows," she said. "I was born in chains, but tonight I choose you." Ethan pulled her to her feet gently. "Then let's walk in the light instead," he said, smiling faintly. Outside, the scanner on the shelter beeped twice, then stopped. Someone, or something, was nearby. Ethan looked at the screen, his smile fading. "Looks like trouble found us." Vexa narrowed her eyes. "Then let me repay your kindness, human. I'm not weak anymore." The contract was sealed, not in paper or blood, but in trust and survival in the cold night that brought them together. The wind was quiet that evening, too quiet. Ethan sat on the roof of the shelter, holding a scanner in one hand and a thermal cloak around his shoulders. Vexa stood beside him, her sharp eyes watching the sky. They hadn't seen trouble since that night, but Ethan knew peace never lasted long on Virex 9. He passed her a small metal scope. "Check the ridge just past the frozen ridge line." Vexa held it steady, then stiffened. "There," she whispered. "Something's moving." Ethan took the scope, zoomed in, and cursed softly. A red glow engine light blinked behind the mountain curve. Too quiet for a trade ship. "That's a bounty drone," Ethan muttered. "Model KX-900. Heavy scanner, stun beam, tracking tech. He stood up fast. It's looking for someone. Vexa's face went pale, her hand moving to her neck like an old reflex. It's looking for me. They rushed inside the shelter. Ethan slammed the door and locked the steel bolts. Don't panic, he said, opening a drawer full of parts and tools. Help me shut down anything that gives off a heat signal. Vexa moved fast, covering the heater, placing metal covers over vents, but the shelter had one weak spot. The roof transmitter Ethan had been using to scan the stars. Too late, a red light flashed on the wall. Target acquired. A loud boom echoed. Outside, dust fell from the ceiling. The door shook under a sudden blast of heat. The KX-900 had landed, and it was scanning the shelter. Vexa pressed against the wall, shaking. They're here for me, she whispered. They always come. I should leave. Maybe it'll go away if it doesn't detect both of us. Ethan grabbed her arm. No one's leaving. Not after what you've been through. He picked up a small plasma tool and opened a hidden panel in the wall. Help me get into the crawl tunnel. The shelter had a maintenance path that led into the caves below, used for emergencies. Ethan led the way, his tool lighting. The path. Vexa followed closely, still trembling. The tunnel was narrow and cold, but at least it didn't beep or shine red lights. Where are we going? She asked, voice low. To the old mining tunnels, Ethan said. Drones can't track through all that rock and metal. Behind them, they heard the sound of metal claws ripping into the shelter. The drone had broken in, and it was searching. Vexa closed her eyes, trying not to cry. They'll mark you as a criminal for helping me. Ethan didn't stop walking. Then I guess I'll be a criminal, he replied. I'm not giving you up. After what felt like an hour, they reached a large cavern, deep and dark. Rusty machines lay broken all around, half buried in dust and time. Ethan set up a small portable lamp and sat down, breathing hard. Vexa looked at him, confused. Why would you risk your life for me? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked into the distance and said, Because I know what it feels like to lose someone. He pulled out a tiny charm from his pocket, his sister's old bracelet. She's out there, maybe taken like you were. I couldn't save her. But I can save you. Vexa stepped forward, gently taking the bracelet in her hand. I'll help you find her, she said. If we live through this. Suddenly, a crackling noise came from the old control room in the cave. An old comm screen flickered on, showing static. Then a voice, human known as Ethan Gray. By helping stolen property, you are in violation of Galactic Code 71A. Surrender the slave or face destruction. Vexa's body tensed, her eyes glowing brighter. I am not property, she growled. I was born royal. Ethan turned to her, shocked. What did you say? But before she could answer, she fell to one knee, gripping her head. Something in the cave was triggering her memory. An old system, maybe, or an ancient frequency. Her body glowed brighter than before. Symbols lit up on her arms. Faint, glowing tattoos that had been hidden before. I remember, she gasped. There's a system here, a machine that knows who I am. The drones outside kept scanning, but something had changed. The cave wasn't just a hiding place anymore. It was connected to Vexa's past. Ethan looked around, now more alert. If there's a machine down here that recognizes you, he said, maybe we can use it. Maybe we can shut those drones down from the inside. Vexa nodded, still shaking, but now her eyes were full of fire. I'm done running, she said. Let's fight. The sound of metal feet echoed in the distance. The drones had found the tunnel, but this time, Vexa didn't hide. She stood beside Ethan, her hand glowing with old energy and new rage. She had been hunted, used, and discarded. But now, with a human beside her and a power waking inside her, she was ready to be something more than a survivor. She was ready to fight back. The mining tunnel was dark. Dust floated through the cold air like slow snow. Old machines sat silent, forgotten, rusted, and broken. But deep in the rock, something was still alive. Ethan walked carefully, his light sweeping across the walls. Beside him, Vexa moved slower now, one hand pressed to her head. Her glowing, skin was getting brighter, her tattoos pulsing with light. She looked both scared and amazed, like someone walking through a dream. "There's something down here," she whispered. "I can feel it, calling my name." Ethan looked at her, concerned. "Are you sure it's not just memory?" Vexa shook her head. "No, it's not memory. It's alive." They passed through a broken metal gate, where cables dangled like vines. Ahead, an old blast door stood half open, covered in old alien symbols. The light from Vexa's body reacted to it, and with a soft hum, the door opened by itself. Ethan raised his tool, ready for anything. But what lay beyond wasn't danger. It was silence. It was peace. Inside the chamber stood a large orb, floating in the air. Wires connected it to the ceiling, and panels blinked gently like breathing. Ethan stepped forward. "What is this place?" Vexa stared at the orb, her eyes wide. "This is a memory vault," she said slowly. "Built by the royal families of my kind, long before I was born." The orb glowed brighter as she stepped closer. Then a calm, deep voice filled the chamber. Identity match confirmed. Royal line. Vexa of House Therion. "Welcome, my queen." Ethan's jaw dropped. He turned to her, stunned. You really are a queen?" Vexa looked down, breathing hard. "I was born into it," she whispered. "But I never lived it. My family was overthrown, sold, forgotten. I grew up in chains, not in palaces." The voice continued. "This vault contains ancient royal data, hidden during the fall of Therion rule. Do you wish to reclaim your command?" Vexa hesitated. "Command? Of what?" The orb shifted and a screen appeared. It showed old star maps, fleet codes, trade routes, and hidden messages, all buried deep in lost space. This could lead us to them," Ethan said. "Eyes wide to your people, to the truth about what happened, and maybe even to my sister," he added, voice quiet. But the vault spoke again. "Accessing these files will trigger alerts across galactic networks. You will be marked as a returning royal and hunted." Vexa looked at Ethan, her face calm but fierce. "They're already hunting me," she said. "I'd rather be hunted as a queen than live as a slave." She stepped forward and placed her hand on the orb. Light poured from the sphere, covering her like a soft flame. Her tattoos glowed fully now, symbols of her house, her past, her power. Ethan backed up, shielding his eyes. When the light faded, Vexa stood taller. Her voice was clearer, her presence stronger. Something inside her had awakened. "I remember now," she said. "My real name, my mother's face, the songs of our world. I was stolen as a child, but I was never broken." Ethan smiled. "Then let's show them that." The vault beeped softly and released a small device, like a bracelet. "This will mask your signal temporarily," the vault said. "But not for long." Vexa placed it on her wrist. "It'll be enough." Suddenly the room shook. From above, a loud echoing crash broke the silence. Metal hitting rock. Ethan turned to the scanner in his hand. More drones. They found the cave entrance. Vexa turned toward the exit, her hands glowing faint blue. "We need to go now." But the vault spoke one final time. "A message has been stored here. Meant for your return." A small light appeared in the center of the room. It played a hollow recording of a woman. Her features similar to Vexa's. She was older, regal, with silver markings and kind eyes. "My daughter," the woman said. "If you are seeing this, then you have survived. We hid you in the hope that one day you would find yourself again. You carry not just blood, but the heart of our people. Find the humans, they are not like the others." The message faded. Vexa stared at the empty space in silence. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she stood strong. Ethan touched her shoulder gently. "Your mother believed in us," he said. "Let's make her proud." They ran back through the tunnel. Behind them, the vault sealed itself once more. The red lights of enemy drones blinked in the distance, but now Vexa wasn't running as prey. She was moving with purpose, with power. The cave wasn't just a hiding place anymore. It was the beginning of something greater. The Queen had awakened, and her story had only just begun. The air inside the cave was heavy. Ethan and Vexa sat near a small heater, their breaths forming mist in the cold. Outside, the sound of distant machines echoed through the tunnels. The drones were hunting, moving slowly, carefully, like predators. In the night, Ethan worked quickly, his hands moving over wires, broken blasters, and scraps of old mining tools. He was building traps, simple, desperate, but maybe enough to buy them time. Beside him, Vexa watched in silence. Her glowing skin dimmed as she thought deeply. "You should have left me," she said at last, her voice quiet. "You would be safe by now, hidden, forgotten." Ethan shook his head without looking up. "Safe doesn't mean much if you're alone." He tightened a bolt, sparks flying as the device lit up. "You deserve more than running." Vexa stared at him. Her life had been chains, commands, and silence. No one had ever told her she deserved anything. Not until now. After a long pause, she rose and walked to a small supply bag. From it, she pulled a flask and filled it with warm liquid from the heater. Then she returned to Ethan and held it out. "A drink," she said softly. "The same way you gave me one when I was dying." Ethan stopped his work and looked at her. The steam from the flask curled into the cold air. He took it, sipped slowly, and felt the warmth spread through his chest. It wasn't much, but it carried meaning. Hope, connection, a promise. He passed it back to her, and she drank as well. Her hands shook, but her eyes didn't. "If I survive tonight," she whispered, "I will not be anyone's slave. If I die, at least I die free and not forgotten." Ethan placed the flask down and stood. "No," he said firmly. "If we survive, you won't serve anyone, not even me. You'll choose your own path." Vexa looked at him long, her lips trembling. "You don't understand, Ethan," she whispered. "My kind was made to obey. Our blood carries the contract. But when you gave me that drink, it changed me. You broke the chain I didn't know could break." Ethan put a hand on her shoulder. "Then let's make sure no one can put it back." The ground trembled. Both of them froze as the sound of claws scraping rock came closer. The drones were entering the tunnels. Ethan grabbed his plasma tool. "They're here." Vexa stood, her body glowing brighter than before. The marks on her skin shimmered like fire. "I won't hide anymore," she said, her voice steady. "I am Vexa of House Therion." Ethan gave her a small grin. "Then let's make them regret ever coming here." They moved quickly, Ethan setting the traps he had built. Wires stretched across the tunnel floor, leading to charges and pulse emitters. Vexa stood near the entrance, waiting, her hands glowing with a strange energy she barely understood. The first drone crawled in, its red eyes sweeping the cave. It scanned, then beeped sharply. Target acquired. Ethan ducked behind cover. "Now," he shouted. Vexa raised her hands and blue fire burst out, slamming into the drone's scanner. The machine twitched, confused, before Ethan's trap exploded beneath it. The drone fell, sparking, smoke filling the cave, but more were coming. The sound of heavy steps echoed louder. 5, 6, maybe more. Vexa's breath quickened, but she stood tall. Ethan reloaded his tool, sweat dripping from his face. "This isn't about winning," he said. "It's about surviving the night." Vexa glanced at him, then back at the tunnel. "No," she whispered. "It's about more than that. It's about proving I am not theirs anymore." The next wave of drones rushed in, firing stun beams that lit up the walls. Ethan fired back, his shots quick but careful. One beam hit the wall near him, burning through stone. Vexa unleashed another blast of light, her tattoos glowing brighter with every strike. The drones hesitated, their scanners flickering. They recognized something ancient, something forbidden. Royal code detected. One of them beeped in confusion, adjusting protocol, but before it could finish, Vexa's power tore through it. She stood in the middle of the cave, her body glowing. Like a star. "I am not your property," she roared, her voice shaking the stone walls. Ethan used the moment to trigger the last trap. The tunnel collapsed behind the drones, crushing two under heavy rock. Silence fell for a moment, only the sound of crackling fire filling the cave. Vexa's glow dimmed, and she dropped to her knees. Breathing hard, Ethan ran to her side, helping her up. "You did it," he said. "You're stronger than them." She looked at him with tears in her glowing eyes. "No," she whispered. "We did it." Outside, the night was still dangerous. More hunters would come, stronger and smarter. But inside that cave, with the scent of smoke and the memory of one shared drink, two strangers had become something more than survivors. They had become a promise that chains could break, that hope could fight back, and that war was only the beginning. Smoke rose from the collapsed tunnel. Broken metal and shattered rock covered the floor. Ethan helped Vexa to her feet, her body still glowing faint blue. Her breath was unsteady, but her eyes were sharp. They had survived the first wave, but they both knew. More were coming, and this time they would not send drones, they would send enforcers trained and ruthless. Ethan checked his weapon. It was overheating, nearly out of charge. The traps were gone, the cave was exposed. And yet, he felt calm, because beside him stood someone who was no longer afraid. Vexa raised her head, her glowing mark shimmering across her arms and face. Her memories had returned. Her power had awakened. She was not just a runaway anymore. She was a royal. She was a queen. They moved deeper into the cave. Ethan found an old command console, cracked, dusty, but still functional. He tapped into the power lines from the memory vault. A small screen lit up, revealing energy reserves and map data. "There's a tunnel that leads to the surface," he said, pointing. "If we can reach it, we might escape before the next strike team lands." Vexa placed her hand on the console. "No," she said. "I'm not running again. They must know. I'm not weak anymore." Ethan turned toward her. "Then what do we do?" "We make them see me," she answered. "Not as a slave, but as the air they tried to erase." Before Ethan could speak, a loud sound shook the cave. Engines, big ones. They rushed to the edge of the broken tunnel and looked up. A ship, black, sharp, and heavy, was descending through the dust. This wasn't a drone. It was a collector-class enforcement craft. Aboard it were soldiers bred for one thing: capture and control. Red lights swept the ground, scanning the rocks. Ethan and Vexa backed into a shadowed area. "We can't fight them," Ethan whispered. "Not head-on." Vexa's eyes burned with light. "Then we use their strength against them." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The symbols on her body pulsed in rhythm like a heartbeat. Suddenly, the console nearby began to blink, as if sensing her command. Ancient systems across the cave lit up, reacting to her bloodline. A voice echoed from the walls. "Therian authority confirmed, defense grid activating." Ethan's jaw dropped. "Wait, this cave has weapons." The floor shook as energy nodes rose from the ground. Small towers aimed toward the cave mouth, humming with raw power. Vexa turned to Ethan. "You gave me a choice when no one else did. Now I choose to fight." She stepped into the open. The red lights of the ship locked onto her instantly. Target confirmed. Vexa of House Therian. Engage capture protocol. A team of armored soldiers dropped from the ship, fast, trained, silent. They raised their stun cannons and moved. In tight formation, but Vexa didn't run. She raised her glowing hands and shouted, "You cannot capture what no longer belongs to you." The soldiers fired. Energy beams shot through the air, but the cave defenses lit up at the same moment. Blue shields blocked the blasts, and a wave of power slammed into the soldiers. Two were knocked down instantly. The rest scattered. Ethan joined the fight, hitting buttons on the console to redirect energy flows. He rerouted power to the defense towers, turning the cave into a fortress. "I've got your back," he shouted. Vexa moved like a storm. She wasn't trained for war, but something ancient guided her steps. Her light wrapped around her hands like fire. She struck the ground, and shockwaves burst through the stone. The ship tried to rise, sensing danger. But Vexa focused her energy into one final blast. She aimed at the engines, and the beam hit perfectly. The ship spun out of control, crashing against the rocks. Flames and sparks exploded in the sky. The remaining soldiers dropped their weapons and ran, and for the first time in her life, Vexa stood tall in victory. She breathed heavily, her body glowing brighter than ever. The marks on her skin now fully active, like stars dancing across her arms. Ethan ran to her, eyes wide with disbelief. "You just brought down an entire enforcer, squad." Vexa nodded slowly. "I'm done hiding," she said. "They want to erase my bloodline. Then I'll remind the stars who I am." Ethan smiled and looked around at the wreckage. "What now?" he asked. She stepped past the broken weapons and burning ship. "We find others," she said. "Others like me, still in chains, still lost. I'm not just going to survive, Ethan. I'm going to rise." The Queen had fought back, and her voice would echo far beyond that cave. What started with a warm drink had become the beginning of a revolution. The cave was silent. Smoke drifted from the wreckage of the fallen enforcer ship. The fire had faded, the wind had calmed, but something new was rising in the air, something powerful. Hope, Vexa, stood in the center of it all, her body glowing, softly, the old markings on her skin now fully awakened. Her face was calm, her eyes strong. She was no longer hiding, no longer running. She was a queen. Ethan sat nearby, wrapping a bandage around his arm, a small burn from the last blast, but he didn't complain. He looked at Vexa with quiet pride. "Guess they know your name now," he said, smiling. Vexa walked over and crouched beside him. "They'll know yours too," she replied. "You're the human who stood with me when no one else would." Ethan chuckled. "I didn't do much," she shook her head. "You gave me a drink when I was freezing. You called me by a name when I had none. You gave me freedom." Ethan looked away, his voice quiet. "You gave it to yourself, Vexa. I just helped you see it." She looked at him for a long moment, then slowly reached out and placed her hand over his. "I made a promise that night," she whispered, "that I would serve you for saving me." Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but she raised a hand, gently. "Let me finish," she said, smiling softly. "I thought I was giving you my life, but what I really gave you was my trust." Ethan nodded slowly. "And I'll protect that," he said. "Always." Above them, a soft hum filled the air, familiar, but different. They stepped outside the cave and looked up. A small ship hovered above the ridge. Not a warship, not a hunter. A peaceful vessel, it carried the symbol of the old royal house, House Therian. The message Vexa had triggered from the memory vault had reached someone. Others had heard it, others who remembered. The ship landed, and 3 alien figures stepped out. They looked like Vexa, same glowing skin, same silver hair. One of them bowed deeply. "My queen, we thought you were lost. Forever." Vexa walked forward slowly. She didn't speak right away. Her voice was steady when it came. "I was lost," she said, "but this human brought me back." They looked at Ethan with surprise. A human. Helping royalty? It was rare, unheard of even. Vexa turned to Ethan and held out her hand. "I will go with them," she said. "There are others like me out there, still trapped, still silent. I have work to do." Ethan nodded, trying to hide the emotion in his eyes. "You don't need me anymore," he said quietly. Vexa stepped closer. "I don't need you," she said, "but I want you." Ethan blinked, surprised. Vexa smiled. "I want you by my side, not as a master, not as a servant, but as my friend, as my equal." She pulled a small object from her side pouch, a silver crest with a glowing blue stone. "This is a royal seal," she said. "With it, you can travel anywhere in my name. Stay human, stay free, but know this: I will never forget what you did for me." Ethan looked down at the seal in his hand. He felt its warmth, its weight, not just metal, but meaning. He looked up and met her gaze. "Then let's go find the others," he said. And break. More chains. Together, they walked toward the ship. The others stepped aside, letting them pass. No one questioned it. No one stopped them, because they saw it clearly now. This wasn't just a queen and a mechanic. This was the beginning of something. New an alliance made not through war or contracts, but through kindness through one warm drink weeks later. News spread across the stars. The lost heir of House Therion had returned, and by her side was a human, brave, loyal, and free. Together, they built an outpost in the outer colonies, a place where bondservants and castaways came seeking refuge. A place without masters, without chains. Some whispered that the queen had fallen for her human protector. Others said the human had tamed a goddess. But those who met them knew the truth. They were not master and servant, not royalty and subject. They were two broken souls who found each other, who healed each other. And now, they offered that same hope to others. One warm drink had saved her life, and in return, she gave him something even greater, a reason to live, a place to belong, and a promise that would never be broken, not by time, not by war, not by the stars, the end.